There's this big myth floating around the construction industry that contract management is hard. Well, if you can read and follow rules, you can manage a contract. So, in this video, I'm going to show you the absolute basics of construction contract management. The first thing to understand is that a contract is simply a rule book. It tells you what you can and cannot do and how to act in different situations. It's the exact same concept as the rules of a game like chess. For example, in AS 4000 Australian Standard Conditions of Contract, there's a clause that the contractor will get a variation if there's a discrepancy between the bill of quantities and the contract documents. The wording will be confusing and overly complex, but the underlying principle is very simple. So, if a contract is a rule book, then contract management is a game. It's how we use these rules to ensure our projects get delivered profitably, safely, and while keeping our clients happy. Any construction contract has two roles. There's a buyer, who is the person paying for something to get done, and there is the seller, who is the one providing the service. In any construction project, you will take on both of these roles. You'll sign a head contract with your client where you take on the role of the contractor or the seller of the service, and you will sign a contract with your supply chain and subcontractors where you will take on the role of the buyer or the principal, the one paying for something to get done. As the buyer, you will be the one defining what you want done, running a procurement process, selecting and negotiating a contract, and then facilitating and administrating the contract works. When you take on the role of the contractor, you will respond to a client's procurement documents or RFP. You will prepare a price and a submission. You'll negotiate a contract, then you'll do the work as specified in the contract and get paid for the work you've completed. This occurs in fundamentally two stages. We have the contract formation stage where we negotiate and sign a contract, and then we have the contract administration stage where each party does what they said they would as according to the contract. We can then map this out into four distinct quadrants. We have tendering or bidding, which is our upstream contract formation. We have procurement, which is our downstream contract formation. Then we have both head and subcontract administration. Okay, so we understand the phases and parties in a contract. Let's talk more about the specifics of what is actually contained in a contract. Fundamentally, a contract is going to define two things. The work, so what the contractor is actually obligated to deliver. For example, a concrete slab that is 200 millimeters thick, that's 10 meters by 6 meters. This is defined by the drawings, the specifications, and the scope of works, which are attached to the contract. Arguably, this is more intuitive to us and also more important than the actual rules themselves. Importantly, most disputes in construction actually start around the definition of the work and what is in scope and out of scope. So as much as contracts are about the actual clauses and specifications, they're also about how the work is defined. Then sitting above the actual definition of the work, we have the rules, which is how each party is meant to act. This is defined by our general and special conditions of contract. Some contracts will be standard form like AS 4000 in Australia or the FIDIC international contracts, or companies may develop a custom specific one for a project. Clauses are grouped into relevant subtopics, and then the special conditions of contract will define exactly how these clauses play out. For example, you might have a clause for liquidated damages that says if the contractor does not complete the work by the date of practical completion, then they will incur liquidated damages, where the special conditions will define what this liquidated damages rate is. So I don't have time to go through each of the specific clauses and what you're likely to encounter, but you can think of them as some simple groups. So number one, we have the scope and order of precedence. This, for me, is always the most important one, which is what you're actually building and which documents define this, and the order that you need to interpret these documents, because construction contracts will always have hundreds of attachments, and understanding what order these documents define the work in is absolutely essential. You then have how time is defined, which would be the date for practical completion, the construction program, the responsibilities to maintain it, the liquidated damages, and how to claim extension of time. You'll then have the payment process, so both defining when and how to make payment claims and also how the contract value can be claimed. Is it lump sum? Is it schedule of rates? Or is it provisional sums? You'll then have clauses that define variations and how work is changed when the scope changes. We've got defects and warranties, which is how you prove that the work is done correctly, and what responsibilities you have to rectify defective work. There will always be risk allocation clauses that define things like the insurances you have to hold, the limit of liability, and your consequential loss obligations. Then you'll also have default and dispute clauses, which when you get into an argument with your clients or your subcontractors, what happens and how do you resolve these disputes? So contract formation is all about how you define the price and the terms and conditions under which you're willing to do the work. Through tendering and bidding, it really comes down to estimating and contract reviews, preparing a price and submission where you could actually deliver the project profitably. Through procurement, that's where you define exactly what you want a contractor to do incredibly clearly, and you leverage market competition to get the best price and negotiate the best terms and conditions for the package of works you want to let. Contract administration is then what happens after you sign the contract and begin the project. Contract administration starts once the terms are set. And there's really two sides to contract administration. You'll have tasks that are about meeting your obligations, like doing the work, paying your subcontractors, or handing over the project on time. Then you'll also have clauses that help you claim entitlements, such as payment claims, variations, when you can claim EOTs and delay costs. I like to think of contract administration as two distinct sets of tasks. We have our business as usual tasks. These are our regular ongoing obligations we have to do, such as having meetings with our clients and subcontractors, making payment claims, approving payment claims, dealing with RFIs, having regular meetings, and recording meetings. Then we have change and issue management tasks. So this is what happens when things change. This is when we put in variations, prepare extensions of times, make notices, and claims. With our business as usual task, we run into problems when we do not follow process, but our change management is where we either make or lose money. We do more work than we said we were going to do and don't recover the costs. Now, something I want to talk about is that fundamentally, you can't administrate a contract well if you don't deliver a project well. Building stuff correctly, on time, coordinating the works properly is always going to manage more than administrating the contract. The key here and the fundamental point to understand is you can deliver a project perfectly and still lose money if you're not issuing notices, if you're not managing your entitlements and claiming your entitlements, if you're not managing risk properly and following the process in the contract. I always think it is an absolute tragedy when you have contractors deliver these complicated, technically messy projects, but they lose money because they don't claim variations and they don't follow simple processes. So if I was going to give you the 80-20 of this topic, it is read the contract, follow the rules, and record and document everything. Contract admin is fundamentally an exercise in discipline. A reminder in your calendar to submit a payment claim by the 25th of each month is much simpler than the temporary works requirements for a 6-meter high in situ wall, but arguably just as important. We have a much deeper dive if you do want to learn more about contracts administration in this video, so watch that next.